Hello everybody and welcome back to Expert Examiner IELTS. My name is Glyn and in this video we're going to give feedback on Aziz's speaking test. Before we get into that, if you'd like to have your own free practice IELTS speaking test with feedback, or if you'd like me to check your IELTS writing tasks, join one of my groups. I'm on Facebook and Telegram, links below. Anyway, let's get into this test and see how Aziz does. Sorry, I don't know if it's Aziz or Aziz, so if I mispronounce it, very sorry. Good afternoon, my name is Glyn. Would you please tell me your full name?
Good afternoon. My full name is Aziz Mirza.
And what should I call you?
You can call me Aziz.
Aziz, got it. Okay, thank you, Aziz. Now, in this first part of the test, I'm going to ask you some questions about yourself. Where do you live?
I live in Tashkent. It is the capital of Uzbekistan.
Cool. Now, some people might think, the candidate needs to develop more. You don't. With this question, where do you live? You really don't have to go into great detail. I think Aziz answers it perfectly fine here. Tashkent, it's the capital of Uzbekistan. That's fine. Of course, the examiner will ask you follow-up questions about the city, so you will have a chance to develop with those follow-up questions. And what do you like most about living in Tashkent?
I have very good friends, lots of relatives, and
Just a little. I have very good friends, like a little bit very good friends. We don't. It feels like every, and I know that we're still very early in the test, but it feels like the vowel sounds are being overpronounced. Now we know in English, the unstressed vowels tend to be schwas, the sound, but very good friends. It just seems a little bit like overpronunciation of vowel sounds.
I generally think that people there are friendly.
I generally think that people there are friendly. So there is some intonation there. I don't think the intonation is like fully appropriate and the sentence stress is a bit strange. Yeah, so slightly odd with the sentence stress, but there is some intonation. And is there anything you'd like to change about this place?
Probably the city infrastructure. It's not that pedestrian.
Can we get that infrastructure? The correct pronunciation is infrastructure. Infrastructure, not infrastructure. So we get the wrong word stress and also this rolling R.
Pedestrian friendly, and there is a high risk of getting hit by a car.
Okay, pedestrian friendly, as a compound adjective, it's kind of good, but I don't know, when we think about the appropriacy of language, I mean, there's nothing wrong. I want to say there's nothing wrong with saying it's not very pedestrian friendly. I think that's okay. But when I think about like absolute natural language use, I would never like none of my family members would ever say it's quite a pedestrian friendly area. They'd say, oh, it's not very friendly for pedestrians. So using that compound adjective, this increases something that we call the lexical density of the speech, but higher, and I'm sorry for all of the linguistic jargon, but higher lexical density is generally associated with prepared speech, generally writing, not spontaneous speech production, usually speaking.
Not only because the drivers are reckless, but also because
Okay, not only, but also the drivers are reckless, fine.
the urban environment is not safe.
The urban, so we get again a small mispronunciation there. It shouldn't be urban, it should be urban. And just notice sometimes, right? Sometimes candidates use like heightened language, or they try to use what we call like what some people call advanced language or IELTS language. Now, the problem with this is that the delivery sometimes feels off because people are so focused on that like lexical item that they often pause before they say it. And I'm going to replay this. Just notice the slight pause before the candidate says urban. Just notice it.
Not only because the drivers are reckless, but also because the urban environment is not safe.
So there's a small pause before, there's a small pause afterward, because the urban environment isn't safe. And this is what one of many reasons why many people say don't rely on memorized bits of vocab. Don't try to force in higher level vocab that is outside of your general communicative repertoire, the type of language that you usually use. And it's not just because, many people get the meaning of the word wrong. It's also because it can affect the pronunciation, the delivery, and the flow of your speech when you are attempting to use words which are outside your communicative repertoire. It kind of feels odd in the sentence. But again, there's nothing wrong with urban environment. It just feels like that, that natural flow of speech isn't quite there for like the highest levels.
in general. So
In general, again, we get this in general. So it should be in general. And of course, there's nothing. This isn't like to say that the accent is the problem. It's just that there are features in English. English is a semitonal language, and there's lots to say about that. But one important feature of English is that we have vowels which have strong pronunciation and weak pronunciation, and we have words that have strong pronunciation and weak pronunciation. And when you pronounce words like general, it feels like, okay, this is an aspect of pronunciation that you're unfamiliar with, that you are speaking English as if it is a completely phonetic language, and it isn't a phonetic language. The words, when we might write j, e, n, e, r, a, e, general. But when we speak, our speech doesn't always match exactly how we write. So it's general. And there are different pronunciations and different accents which are acceptable, but general, it feels like, again, over pronunciation of vowels. I won't be overly detailed on every aspect of speech, I promise.
it would be my like wish probably. Yes.
And okay, maybe because of so much analysis, we're losing focus on coherence a bit. Do you think you'll continue living in Tashkent in the future?
I believe so. I believe so.
Cool, I like this. I believe so.
Because I'm very attached to this place and I would love my children to grow up there.
Grow up here is probably better than grow up there. You're in Tashkent at the moment, so it's here.
But I might travel to a few more countries just to see what it feels like to live there.
Cool to see what it feels like to live there. Very nice.
And I might change my mind, but for
cool, I might change my mind. Really good modality.
the foreseeable future, I would like to stay.
Foreseeable future, really good collocation. So very accurate there. Lots of, very natural language. I really like that answer.
Yeah.
Let's talk about sport now. Do you have a favorite sport?
Let me think of it for a little while. So my favorite sport is cycling.
I'm not convinced by that, right? Again, I often tell candidates that there's no pressure to find the right answer. And for me, now I don't know this for sure, but it seems to me like the candidate doesn't have a favorite sport. And so the candidate is thinking, I don't have a favorite sport, but I need to answer the question. So I'm going to take a while. I'm going to think about some sport, and then I'm going to make up an answer. Whereas a much more natural response would be, I don't really have a favorite sport. Like, there are a few different sports that I like and a few different sports that I've done. If I had to choose one, I'd probably say cycling, but it's not. I don't know. That would be a more natural thing. If you have a favorite sport, you shouldn't have to think in your brain. Or maybe you like so many different sports that it's difficult to choose one. Instead of sitting, pausing, and thinking and going, cycling, probably better to say, I love so many different sports. Like, there's football, there's skiing, but the one I probably like the most is cycling. So talking through some of your thought patterns could be helpful there.
Yeah, I really enjoy cycling, even though I haven't cycled in quite a long time.
Cool, even though haven't cycled in quite a long time. Very accurate.
It used to be something that I did very regularly.
Cool, it used to be something that I did. Really nice complexity of sentences. Regularly, I'm not sure about the pronunciation of this. Let's have a look.
Something that I did very regularly.
Very regularly. Yeah, so candidate does have issues with the R, and it's fine to have the rolling R. Having that rolling R, that is okay. You wouldn't be punished for that necessarily. It's just when you have the rolling R in between some vowel sounds and you overstress the vowel sounds, that might be something that draws attention.
I enjoy writing it. I feel...
Yeah, so it's strange. I'll just repeat. The candidate says he used to do it he used to go cycling regularly. I used to enjoy riding it. What does it mean here? Just listen to it again.
Something that I did very regularly. I enjoy riding it.
I enjoy riding it. Riding what? Because you haven't mentioned the word bicycle. So the use of it here is off.
Feel the autonomy, and I feel my bike when I ride it. It gives me so much pleasure.
Okay, then he says, I feel my bike when I ride it. But I would say this is just the candidate trying to, I'm going to use IELTS as a verb, trying to IELTS, right? And I'm not convinced by this answer, and I kind of get lost in the coherence. Just let's listen to this answer again.
Something that I did very regularly. I enjoy riding it. I feel the autonomy, and I feel my bike when I ride it. It gives me so much pleasure and thrill.
Yeah, I'm not persuaded by that, and I don't. The autonomy, did he say? It gives me pleasure and thrill. It just doesn't feel like, there are not many L1 users of English that I know who would respond to the question, what's your favorite sport, in that way, shall we say. Candidate is IELTSing. And do you prefer watching or playing sports?
It really depends on what kind of sports we're talking about.
Cool, again, really nice complex sentences there. Depends on what kind of sports we are talking about. Candidate uses an omitted relative pronoun. Cool.
So if it's football, I would rather watch because I'm a
And follows up, it depends, and then with some conditionals, if, blah, blah, blah.
very bad football player. I cannot feel the game. I cannot like give the ball to other players and always end up making some faults.
Always end up, really like it, always end up doing something, making some faults. I don't like this making some faults. Making some mistakes, making some errors, fine. Making some faults, that sounds strange. And again, maybe this is an overloading of synonymy. Many people say, don't use the word mistake in IELTS, use the word fault. And then this is an example where it sounds unnatural. I always end up making some faults, making some mistakes, making some errors, better.
Yeah. But if it's like, I don't know, if it's cycling, I would love to do it, but not professionally, I guess.
I would love to do it. So would love to, means I want to, or it's a hypothetical. And I don't know. The question isn't about like future desire. What would you like to do? It's do you prefer? So you're asked to choose between and state a preference, and we don't use would love to when we state a preference. If it's like, what would you like to do this evening, go to the cinema or go to the theater? Oh, I would love to go to the theater. Fine. But if it's a question, what do you prefer, going to the cinema or going to the theater? I would love to go to the theater. That doesn't quite hit. And what sports did you have to do when you were at school?
So at school we had PE classes, and sometimes
Oh, we had PE classes. Nice.
we would have to play football.
We would have to. I like this use of would. Typically, we use would when we talk about would for past habits with action verbs, but we would have to in the past. Absolutely fine.
I mean, our PE teacher would let us play football.
And it's strange. We would have to, and then our PE teacher would let us play football. So I'm not sure which modality we're going with here. Are we going with would have to, as in it was an obligation, it was required, or our teacher would let us play football, which is about permission? Now, if I was cynical, I would say that the candidate maybe is trying to show off his knowledge of, infinitives, that we use full infinitive, or actually have to, as one chunk, have to do something, but also that he knows the construction to let somebody do something. Our teacher would let us play football. Maybe the candidate is just trying to show that, look at me, I know this verb pattern that we use, tell somebody to do something, ask somebody to do something, need somebody to do something, but we say let somebody do something without the to. And if I'm really cynical, I would say that's what the candidate is strategizing for, to show off his knowledge of verb patterns. Maybe he isn't. But in the context of the answer, we would have to do this. I mean, our teacher would let us do this. I'm confused now about this modality? Was it strong modality? You had to do it. It was a requirement. It was essential. It was an obligation. Or was it soft? Was it permission? Was it allowing you to do it?
Yeah, though I didn't enjoy it much.
That's why I didn't enjoy it much. What? Because he let you do it.
So yeah, and we did some stretching, running.
Cool, nice vocab here, stretching, running, cool.
What else? So basic physical training.
And are there any new sports that you'd like to try in the future? Sorry, I'm just going to close my window. Sorry about that. So I think the question was, are there any new sports you'd like to try in the future?
I would love to start attending the gym. Yeah.
Would love to, great. Attending the gym, again, this just feels like very often we have Latin-based words in English, and attend, I guess, is one of those Latin-based words, or a French word. They came into our language after William the Conqueror in 1066. But what we often saw, sorry, nobody wants a linguistic lesson here, the old Germanic words that we have in English, and I guess go is one of those old Germanic words, go to the gym, and then attend, a bit Frenchy. And because the French were higher class than the regular Brits or the regular English people back in the day, some of that has stuck where the French words tend to sound a bit higher in register. Attend, return, withdraw, instead of the old Germanic words, which are like go, come back, take out, those phrasal verbs and things like this. And you might think, well, why does that matter? Well, when we think about the highest levels, when we think about like band 9, band 8, band 7, we often think about something we call appropriacy, right? Whenever you teach language, you think about the meaning, the form, the pronunciation, and the appropriacy, the register. How appropriate is it to use attend a gym? And I would think, well, in writing or in professional or formal settings, attend a gym might be okay. But I promise there's not, in my life, all of the and I go to the gym pretty often. I've never met an L1 user in my life, a native speaker L1 user in my life, who uses attend a gym. Not one. The only time I hear it is in IELTS or with other students. So attend a gym, again, the appropriacy, the register just feels a bit strange. And again, this might be because I see all of this nonsense on social media, which is like real world speech, go to the gym, and then IELTS to heighten your language, use attend a gym instead of go to the gym, or instead of very, use absolutely or whatever. And the problem is that the appropriacy is just wrong. So you might think, oh, attend will get me more points than go to the gym because attend is fancier. Attend is less commonly known. Well, that only works if it's appropriate. And here it just isn't appropriate. Attend a gym just sounds odd.
Yes, a friend of mine recently got bulk, so
got bulk. Then you can see, right, if the candidate maintains formal speech throughout the test, you could maybe judge it as, okay, the candidate sees it as a formal setting, and so he's consistent with his formal language. But you can't in one sentence say, I would like to attend the gym because one of my friends got bulk. Right? To get bulk is very informal, and to attend a gym is very formal. And so when you mix your registers like this, it shows a lack of awareness of appropriacy of language.
I haven't seen him in a while, and when I saw him, I was surprised.
Maybe I hadn't seen him in a while is better here.
Because he used to be an
and it says surprised instead of surprised. Notice.
Start attending the gym. Yes, a friend of mine recently got bulk, so I haven't seen him in a while, and when I saw him, I was surprised because
I was surprised. It is not surprised, it's surprised. We know every candidate in Uzbekistan has this problem with ed, that they want to pronounce all of their ed verbs or participle adjectives as id. Surprised. It is not surprised, it's surprised.
He used to be an overweight guy, and now he looks shredded. He has this
cool. He looks shredded, again informal but very precise,
like V-shaped chest and all those muscles. And we agreed to meet up in future and hit the gym together.
Again, hit the gym, very informal, very appropriate here. I like that. It'd be great to meet up and hit the gym together. Great. But that end the gym earlier sounds strange. Let's talk about films now. How often do you watch films?
I watch movies every day, usually at night. I kind of treat myself after a long working day with
I kind of. It seems like there's a syllable. It seems like there's a prefix before treat. I kind of entreat myself, he says.
I
Huh?
watch movies every day, usually at night. I kind of treat myself after
Kind of a treat, maybe? It should just be I kind of treat myself.
a long working day.
I don't like this stuff. Like there are some phrases that I don't like as a human. Long working day, let my hair down, relieve stress, broaden my horizons. These are cliched words and phrases that I hear over and over again. Of course, as an examiner, if they're used appropriately, fine. After a long working day here, I have to say it's appropriately used, but as a person, I just don't like after a long working day because it feels IELTS hacky.
With a movie, I say to myself, like, Aziz, you deserve it. You did a good job, and now enjoy. Enjoy
Cool.
the rest of your night.
And do you have the rest of your night? Again, the rhythm of the speech just sounds a bit off, even though the candidate's pronunciation, apart from some of the overstressing of vowels and the rolling R, and some lack of rhythm. I will say the candidate's pronunciation generally is very, very clear. Any favorite actors or directors?
So the first actor that comes to my mind would
Comes to mind is more common. I know comes to my mind is sometimes used, but it's used far more often by L2 users of English than it is by L1 users of English. The first one that comes to mind is more common than comes to my mind.
be Tom Hanks. Yes, I just love the way he acts in all those movies, and he is very selective when it comes to movies. He had
Cool. He's very selective when it comes to movies. Very nice.
never played in a movie which would,
But he's never played in a movie. I don't know about the word play here.
I don't know, have bad script or bad
Has a bad script or bad scripts. So missing the article there.
script or bad like superstars in it. Yes, it's a bit difficult to explain, but I generally love him. And yeah, whom else do I love?
You don't need to keep going there, right? So sometimes it's awkward when candidates give their speech, they stop, and then the examiner wants to ask the next question, and then the candidate wants to go on. You've answered the question fine there. Thank you. And were there any films that you really loved in your childhood?
Spider-Man. I was a big fan of the Spider-Man.
So not the Spider-Man. I was a big fan of the Spider-Man movies. I was a big fan of the Spider-Man series, where Spider-Man is an adjective, but not I was a big fan of the Spider-Man.
I remember when I watched it for the first time, right after finishing the movie with
After finishing the movie, so a little bit of hesitation.
my family members. I was walking around the living room pretending to shoot the spider webs.
Cool, I love this. I was walking around the living room pretending to shoot the spider webs. Really like that participle there.
Like crawl on the wall, yes, and
Crawl, cool.
just sing the song from the movie.
But it's interesting. I was pretending, and then he uses shooting the spider webs, which is good, and then crawl on the wall and sing the song. I thought those ones should be also in ing, right? Crawling on the wall, singing the song, because it's a continuation of I was doing something. And do you prefer to watch movies in the cinema or at home?
I prefer to watch it at home.
Prefer to watch them, not it.
Usually because it's very convenient for me. I don't have to travel anywhere, spend my money.
So anywhere, we get that what, which sounds like a ver. Instead of anywhere, the candidate says anywhere. Just notice.
And I prefer to watch it at home, usually because it's very convenient for me. I don't have to travel anywhere, spend
Anywhere, anywhere. You hear it?
my money, and it's very easy for me to do it because I have Netflix subscription.
I have Netflix subscription again. No, I have. It should be I have a Netflix subscription. So we've had a few mistakes with articles already. Tom Hanks doesn't appear in movies if it has bad script instead of a bad script. I like the Spider-Man instead of Spider-Man. I have Netflix subscription instead of a Netflix subscription. So are we getting to the point where we say that the candidate has a systematic problem with articles? Maybe.
So yeah,
Okay, thank you. Now, in this all right, so some comments on part one. Some of the vocab really stood out as being amazing. I really loved this, like get bulk and shredded and all of that stuff. I thought was really good. Some occasions where the vocab sounds a bit strange, like to make a fault and to attend the gym. Just the appropriacy sounds slightly off. In terms of grammar, very strong. I think in most of the sentences are error free. I think that is fair to say. Most of the sentences are error free. The candidate had a slip with present perfect versus past perfect. I haven't seen him versus I hadn't seen him. But the issue with the grammar is articles. And probably I'm between the 7 and the 8 on the grammar, where I think, okay, the majority of sentences are error free and we have a wonderful range of grammar. The candidate's range of grammar is great. The question I have is, are those problems with articles systematic? We know that articles, it's not just one piece of grammar, right? There are many, 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 many rules and exceptions with grammar. And what I'm trying to think is, do we see the same kind of mistake? And when we see like, if it doesn't have, or if it has bad script, or I have Netflix subscription, I would say that one more error with like have plus something without an article, for me, that would indicate a systematic error. So he's right on the border at the moment. At the moment, I'm not counting it as a systematic error, but as the test goes on, we will see. In terms of fluency and coherence, yeah, he's answering the questions. They're on topic. Some of the questions feel a little bit like not very persuasive, like the stuff about cycling, where it feels like he's IELTSing, and whenever it feels like someone is IELTSing, generally they don't get 9 for fluency and coherence. He has been on topic, probably around the 8. I don't like how he ends so many answers with like, so yeah. It feels like there's a lack of organization there, but that's okay. That can just be sometimes a person's like character or a nervous tick or something. But certainly strong with fluency and coherence. Pronunciation is very, very clear, but I've mentioned quite a few things about pronunciation. I won't repeat. Let's get on to part 2, because we've already spent 27 minutes, and that's much longer than I usually spend on part 1. The candidate needs to talk about a foreign country that he would like to visit. So this is either present or more likely future time. Not so many opportunities here to, it's not like a story, so you don't have that chance to exploit reported speech and narrative tenses and past modals, but still lots of chances to exploit vocab talking about that country you want to go to. Let's see how the candidate does. I'd like you to now, please.
So there are a lot of countries that I would love to visit, but I decided to tell you about Australia.
Cool. Really like that as an opening, right? It has an opening statement, but also he gets into it very quickly. The problem is he says the Australia, and again, that's a mistake with articles. Speaking now, please.
So there are a lot of countries that I would love to visit, but I decided to tell you about Australia.
Decided to tell you about the Australia. It's not the Australia. And this visit, do we get a visit or a visit? Now, please.
So there are a lot of countries that I would love to visit, but
it kind of has a very soft v sound in there, doesn't it? But it sounds to me more like a word, like visit.
I decided to tell you about Australia because since very recently I met few people who told me about
I met few people, or I met a few people? It should be a few people.
this beautiful country. So we all know about its like.
And it feels like he's rushing a little bit, and I don't know why he's rushing. You can take a pause there. Just notice. Do you notice that he's rushing?
Because since very recently I met few people who told me about this beautiful country. So we all know about its location, but I want to tell you about something less obvious. Yes, less obvious sightseeings.
Sightseeings? Sightseeing is not a singular, is not a countable noun. Sightseeings? Sightseeing is an activity, and we see this a lot. I think the candidate is a Russian speaker, and they have this word in Russian, dostoprimechательности, And I think that a lot of Russian speakers, or I know that a lot of Russian speakers, directly translate the word dostoprimachательности to sightseeings. That is not the pronunciation. The pronunciation of dostoprimachательности is sights, to see the sights. Now we have an expression, we have a go phrase in English, which is to go sightseeing. I like going sightseeing. Go sightseeing, yes. It has a lot of sightseeings. Oh, no, 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 no.
So a friend of mine, Sharina, told me that Australia has very interesting film settings. So, for example,
So just a little bit of breakdown, and notice that pronunciation of very, which sounds odd.
Has very interesting
Very.
film settings. So, for example, the movie Lord of the Rings was shot there.
And the movie is called The Lord of the Rings, not Lord of the Rings, but okay, we get The Spider-Man, but Lord of the Rings. The movie Lord of the Rings, no, actually, you can call Lord of the Rings without the, it's acceptable. Lord of the Rings wasn't shot in Australia, it was shot in New Zealand, but that's okay.
And yeah, I would love to go there and see this desserts and other natural places.
So we get this, and then we get a plural noun, desserts. Dessert is something sweet that you eat after dinner. I think you're talking about deserts.
Where the film taken.
And if you want something really specific, when we talk about Australia, the central part, I think they call it the outback.
Where the film took place, yes.
And again, bit of strange vocab, where the film took place. The film didn't take place there. The shooting of the film took place there. The acting and the production of the film took place. But for me, it sounds odd to say that the film took place in Australia. The film was shot in Australia. The shooting of the film took place in Australia, but the film took place in Australia. A bit odd.
And apart from that,
Apart from that, nice signposting.
know that Australia is famous for its indigenous animals. Yes, we have kangaroos, super poisonous frogs that live only in this country.
Pronunciation is kangaroos, not kangaroos, but okay.
So I'm very keen on nature and animals, and that is why I would like to go there.
To me now, it feels like the candidate is off script. He's out of his notes. Probably he took some notes. Now, an interesting thing about the candidate is that he took his notes on his laptop. Many candidates ask if they can do this. They say, is it okay for me? Because I always say, like, do you have a pen and paper ready to take notes? And they say, can I take them on my laptop? I find that candidates who take notes on their laptop don't do as well as candidates who take notes using pen and paper. I don't know if that's true. I just think it's difficult to manage all of those screens. You know, pen and paper for the win.
So what should I tell you more about it?
What should I tell you more about it? Basically, I think he's about 1 minute 10 into this, and he's like, well, I don't really know what to say.
I believe that I would also like to.
I believe that I would like to. Like, I believe is low modality when we're not sure about something. I believe it's going to be good, but I believe I would like to. That's odd.
Learn about Australian people. I've heard that they're really friendly and super polite and humble.
Okay, just IELTSing, right? I've heard that they're super. I mean, this could be used for any topic, I guess. They're super polite, friendly, and helpful or humble. Feels like it's IELTSing.
And they have very good knowledge of English, obviously, too. So even though this country is quite far away from Uzbekistan, I would love to pay a visit there in some.
I would love to be a wizard there. I would love to be a wizard there. Is that a visitor? I'm not sure.
Very good knowledge of English, obviously, too. So even though this country is quite far away from Uzbekistan, I would love to pay a visit there in some future.
Still can't pick it up. I would love to be a wizard there. A wizard? A wizard! Back to the Lord of the Rings.
You recently asked the tour agent
Again, asked. I recently asked the tour agent
about the average cost.
And again, the stress isn't there, right? It should be the tour agent. It's not the tour agent, it's the tour agent. So in those compound nouns, candidate often puts the stress in the wrong place with sentence stress.
Of a trip there. So for now, it seems a bit expensive, yes.
And you can see often with the candidate's body language, right? At the beginning, let's just look at the beginning of this turn.
Yeah, I would love to go there and see this like deserts and other natural places.
Here he's
Less obvious,
more or
yes,
less
less obvious
comfortable.
sightseeing.
And then when we get into the later stages where he's off script, we see a lot of this. We see a lot of this, which is a sign of discomfort a little bit.
Nature and animals, and also like to learn about Australian people in some future.
This stuff. And of course, you're not punished on your body language, but one of the things, which is quite easy for an examiner to assess is how comfortable does the candidate feel? And this can affect the score for fluency and coherence. There is something in the band descriptors about like having a willingness to give long turns, or a willingness or an ability to produce long turns with ease. And when candidates start doing this, kind of removes that with ease.
I recently asked the tour agent about the average cost of a trip there. So for now, it seems a bit
So they're just small things, but keep positive body language, keep your hands down. You can be a bit expressive with your hands if you want, but
expensive, yes. But maybe next year or year after,
next year or the year after,
I will come to this country as a tourist and come to all of these places I mentioned before. Yeah, I feel like it's gonna be a great trip. Great trip. And Australia
okay, thank you. So let the candidate go for the 2 minutes.
Yeah.
All right, so you've been talking. Okay, so thoughts on part 2. The problem is it's just not organized as a long turn. So we get like stuff at the beginning about the film sets, and then the candidate pivots very quickly to animals, and then doesn't know what to say, and then starts speaking about the people and uses some kind of generic language about like they're very humble and friendly and blah blah blah. But it doesn't feel like a cohesive, well planned, well organized 2 minute turn. Everything else, the same mistakes with articles. At this stage, I am thinking, okay, it's probably a systematic, even though the candidate's grammar is very strong. The candidate has really, really an amazing range of grammar. It's just that question of systematic. And I think now all of those mistakes with articles at this point, probably I'm leaning towards, yeah, it's a systematic problem. Yeah, vocab, very good. I didn't like that sightseeings. It's a bit inappropriate, so probably not the 9 for the vocab, but certainly seems to be at band 8 for vocab. Pronunciation, the same issues, generally very clear, but with some problems with stress timing, which affects the rhythm of the speech. Let's get straight into part 3 about Australia, the country that you'd like to visit. Let's talk a little. And I will say before we get into it, the questions in part 3 here were horrifically difficult, so sorry about that. About cultural exchange now. Do you think learning about another culture is more effective through travel or through books and media? Oh, that one's not so bad.
I believe traveling.
I don't like this. It's almost like the candidate is demonstrating that he has some not problems with comprehension, but it takes him a little bit of time to comprehend. That's not normally a response to a discussion question. I don't know. Feels a bit unnatural.
Is the best option to find out about the culture of a certain country, because of course we can read books and we could
Intonation is really nice here.
I don't know, get some basic assumptions about what a life in the
You don't get assumptions about a place from a book. You make assumptions about a place when you don't know anything. So it's wrong to say that you get assumptions about a place from reading about it.
certain country would be like, but when we come to this place, when we interact with people, we get to know much more.
When we interact with people, yeah, fine.
Through real life interaction, so we get to know people's customs, what do they do about their daily lives, yes, how do people behave. And
so candidates using question forms here, using inversion, how do people blah blah blah, what do people do, but it shouldn't be like this, because you get to know how people live their lives, what people do. So we shouldn't have inverted clauses in what we call embedded questions. So small grammar error.
and so much on.
And how can visiting a foreign country change a person's perspective? That's a difficult one, isn't it? How can visiting a foreign country change a person's perspective? I will say, though, that there's lots of scope for concrete examples here.
So I believe people who travel a lot, they are generally more open-minded.
Okay, but that's not how it changes people's perspective.
Yes, and probably more friendly. I cannot explain why, but maybe like traveling.
So a candidate's making, candidate is just isn't answering the question here. How can traveling change a person's perspective? The candidate describes the personality traits of travelers, but you really want to make that point of saying, well, I think traveling makes people more open-minded, and then demonstrate why, rather than just saying people who travel are open-minded.
Broadens our horizons in a way.
Yeah, broadens our horizons. Okay, doesn't mean anything unless you go into detail and explain what you mean or give an example.
And what else? What else? So traveling seems to be very good experience.
Traveling is a good experience, but again, it doesn't tell us anything about how traveling changes a person's perspective.
Yes.
So there isn't an answer to that question, unfortunately. And how important is it for countries to keep their own culture in the face of globalization?
It is important, but I wouldn't really say crucial because globalization actually is a good thing. If it wasn't for globalization, we wouldn't be enjoying all of these movies, food.
Okay, so the candidate says globalization is a good thing, which is connected to the question. I'm really wondering, though, okay, the focus of the question should be on whether or not it's important or how important it is for countries to keep their own customs and traditions.
And clauses, yes, but countries should try to preserve.
Okay, so he's circling around. Cool.
I believe national music, which is unique and could go and disappear, and of
Again, it feels IELTSing. It feels like the candidate is trying to reach for the correct answer. Oh, they should try to preserve national music, which is really unique. But I don't really. And this often happens with candidates either who are lower level. This candidate isn't a lower level English user. The candidate's level of English is actually really, really good. I think he's underperforming in this test, probably because he's so hyper focused on IELTS. People who are hyper focused on IELTS tend not to do as well. If you're a C1 user and you're really hyper focused on IELTS and you try to hack it and you try to strategize, you won't do as well as someone who's a C1 user of English who just goes into the IELTS test and decides, yeah, I'm going to have a chat. In general, that's been my experience. So, national music, because it's really unique. A bit odd to just focus on something so specific.
course, the language, because every single
Language.
language is beautiful for the idiomatic phrases that it has, for the rhythm and flow, which is unique.
Yeah, and it feels a little bit IELTSy.
And yeah, maybe governments should focus on that as well.
Okay, but we do get, clear answer. Candidate thinks that countries should preserve their national music and their language. Fine. Let's talk a little more about globalization now. So you mentioned some of the positive aspects of globalization. What are some of the negative ones?
So globalization could lead to cultural homogenization, if
Cool, homogenization. Not an easy word to pronounce.
I said this word correctly. It's when
Correctly?
cultures become unidentifiable, so they blend so much that we lose the unique
Cool. Candidate paraphrases and explains well here.
traits of certain cultures and nations.
But I think it's a bit of an exaggeration to say that, cultures become unidentifiable. And so I want to ask the candidate, where that's happened.
And yeah, it seems to be bad. And what else?
And do you
On the
think that's
thing-
happened anywhere in the world? So has it happened anywhere where a culture has become unidentifiable? I don't think so. Maybe some small countries in Europe, but I don't know. It's my ignorance. Maybe Slovenia.
I mean, it's happening in many developing countries. Take Uzbekistan, for example.
Okay, kind of saying it's happening, which is fine. The question is, has it happened? But the candidate says it is happening in Uzbekistan. Fine.
People seem to love like Western music. They like fashion. That's
During the test, I remember writing down the word Western because I thought he said Western music, but now it sounds like Western. Let's have a listen.
I mean, it's happening in many developing countries. Take Uzbekistan, for example. People seem to love like Western music.
No, it sounds okay. Western music, fine.
They like fashion that's come from like
And notice the candidate's fluency has dropped a little bit.
that comes from overseas, and they follow those trends.
Overseas, so not overseas, but overseas. So we get quite a lot of mispronunciations of individual words with the wrong words, the wrong syllable stress.
And because of it, they are paying less attention to local customs.
Cool to pay attention to. Cool.
Yes, they're becoming more Western-minded.
And there's that Western. So it wasn't Western music, but
could be seen those trends. And because of it, they are paying less attention to local customs. Yes, they're becoming more Western-minded.
Western-minded? We do get that Western. I hear a little V in there.
It could be seen as something positive and negative as well, but
So the candidate's pronunciation, I mean, in part one, there were like small aspects of an accent that were noticeable, but mostly it sounded quite American, I thought, fairly American. And now in part three, because the questions are getting more difficult, it seems to be the case that the candidate's pronunciation is also just breaking down a little bit.
it really depends on how do we look at it.
Depends on how we look at it, not on how do we look at it. Let's listen again.
It could be seen as something positive and negative as well, but it really depends on how do we look at it.
Yeah. So this is, I think, the fourth mistake we've had with embedded questions with the wrong word order. So now, while I do think the candidate has grammatical range even for a band 9, I do think the candidate's range of grammar is band 9. Might surprise some of you, but I am that impressed by the range of grammar. But the accuracy, I think we have two different systematic mistakes. Systematic mistakes with embedded questions, systematic mistakes with articles. What kind of companies benefit the most through globalization? So kind of companies, we're kind of looking for genres of companies here, clothes companies or fast food companies, not necessarily specific companies.
So the countries who own those big global brands, such as
the companies that own these big global brands. Well, kind of obviously.
KFC, Zara, I don't know, Bershka, it's another clothing brand, because they expand, they take over other countries.
The companies don't take over the countries.
They make big profits after introducing their shops.
Cool, but specifically, how do they benefit from globalization?
Shopping malls.
An answer here would be, it's cheaper in many for companies that produce things like mobile phones or any electronics company. It's much cheaper to produce things abroad. So many companies, they have manufacturing places or factories in countries where they can pay people a very small salary, and then they sell those products in the Western world for super high products, and that's how they benefit from globalization. That would be a more descriptive or a more powerful or a more informative answer,
etc. So yeah, it's just that because they can make more money for selling their goods and products.
Yeah, a bit obvious, but okay. Now, some people think that in the future, because of globalization, we might live in a world without borders. Do you think that will happen? World without borders, I'm talking about physical borders here, right? So you don't need a visa, you don't need a passport to travel. Just like, I can travel from my hometown of Caerphilly into Cardiff. No one checks my passport. I can go from Cardiff to London and no one checks my passport. The idea is in the future, we'll live in a world where people will be able to travel everywhere without showing passports and visas and that type of stuff.
It sounds too good to be true. I would say it's like a bit utopian to feel this way, to think
Utopian, not utopian, but utopian.
This way. But I believe that in future we will have
in the future. Actually, in future is acceptable.
More, I don't know, common values or
We'll have more common values that's not connected to a country with a world without borders.
Or we would share the same clothing styles.
Same clothing styles. Okay, off topic.
Yeah, it is true up to a certain extent. I believe that people would choose comfort and convenience over
Off topic.
being too patriotic,
Off topic.
for example.
And what could be some possible downsides of a world without borders? If you're unsure in part 3, right, sometimes candidates feel pressure like, oh, I must understand the question. It's a discussion. Part 3 should be a discussion. And if you're not sure, I mean, sometimes people misunderstand the questions, and I think that's the case here with a candidate. And if you misunderstand the question, but you're confident that you've understood, of course, your answer will be off topic. But if you're in doubt, feel free to engage with the examiner and say, what do you mean when you say, like, a world without borders? Do you mean like emotional borders that will all be similar, or do you mean like physical borders between countries? Feel free to engage with the examiner in part 3 because it should be a discussion.
Let me think of it for a while. It's such a big hypothetical question. World without borders.
I like that the candidate is trying to talk through his pain, shall we say.
I don't see like any downsides
I don't see like any downsides. Okay.
to it, because if we have no borders, people would become more friendly. I just assume
If we had no borders, people would become more friendly.
so, since there would be no like.
I mean, the downsides might be that some countries just lose all of their population, right? Because if you're trying to raise a family in a super poor area where there are no jobs and there's no manufacturing, why would anybody stay there? And so we see this in some countries where they have ghost towns where people leave cities behind. And what would that mean for a country if all of its population just left? And of course, that would also lead to overpopulation in some areas, right? Where, in the UK, which is a small island, it just can't have 500 million people. And if there were no borders at all and there was absolute freedom of movement, maybe that would happen.
I don't know, borders, restrictions, and no discrimination. At least this is something that I want to believe, but still it sounds too good to be true, because like
too good to be true a couple of times.
People have always sought their interests. They have always been not.
Candidate's IELTSing, right? He doesn't know. I don't think the candidate is sure that he's on topic here.
So not so friendly to each other. Yeah, we have like lots of examples of wars that were based on.
Based on or based on?
Human greed. So yeah, it sounds too good to be true.
Third time too good to be true in the same answer. Thank you. That is the end of the test. All right, so I've spent already 52 minutes on this. Let's get quickly into the marks because I don't want this video to be 3 hours long. Okay, so fluency and coherence, will start there. We'll say that the candidate is generally very fluent. However, there were some areas in part 3 where he was off topic. When we say in 8 topic development is coherent, appropriate, and relevant, I just think while that was the case in part 1, and to a lesser extent in part 2, in part 3, I can't say that the topic development is coherent, appropriate, and relevant. I think it's a bit off topic for some of the answers. So able to keep going and readily produce long terms without noticeable effort. There is a little bit of effort in there, but fine. And yeah, so because of these so many off-topic things in part 3, originally I thought maybe there is enough 8 because his natural fluency is there. I'm now leaning more towards the 7 for fluency and coherence. So fluency and coherence, I'm going to award the 7. Lexical resource, I think, is probably the candidate's strongest thing. So if we look at the 7, resource flexibly used, yes. To discuss a variety of topics, yes. Some ability to use less common and idiomatic items. I think he has a lot more than that. An awareness of style and collocation. Style, in some parts, yes, but in some parts the appropriacy was slightly off. But I want to look at the 8. So wide resource, yeah. Readily and flexibly. I do think the candidate had a good level of flexibility, precise meaning. In some cases, the candidate was very precise in the meaning. Skillful use of less common. Yes, I think he does have that. So I think for lexical resource, there is 8. I mean, not 9 because we get that like sightseeings and to make a fault and to attend the gym, just slightly off things. So not the 9. Grammatical range and accuracy. Originally, I thought, you know, probably I would award the 8, and I'm still not 100% sure. So let's have a look at the 7 first, right? A range of structures, yes. Flexibly used, yes. Error-free sentences are frequent, yes. Simple and complex sentences are used effectively despite some errors, yes. A few basic errors persist. Have subscription, have bad script. For me, those are quite basic errors with articles at this level. Band 8, wide range of structures, yes. Flexibly used, yes. The majority of sentences are error-free, yes. And that's a difficult thing to achieve. Occasional inappropriacies and non-systematic errors. Are the errors non-systematic? For me, I'm gonna say no. I think there is evidence of systematic errors. So I can't say that only non-systematic errors occur in the candidate's grammar. So for me, unfortunately, I'm pulling that down to a 7. You know, originally I was sure that the candidate feels like a Band 8 candidate. Having spoken to him before the test and after the test, the candidate certainly feels like a Band 8 candidate. But looking at the performance and the scores, it is just a little bit lower. So if we look at pronunciation here, a wide range of looking at the 8 first, a wide range of phonological features. We do have a range, can sustain appropriate rhythm across long utterances, flexible use of stress and intonation across long utterances. I just don't see evidence for that. You know, can be understood easily throughout. Yes. Accent has minimal effect on intelligibility. Yes. But for me, because of so many mispronunciations of individual words, so many instances of, you know, inappropriate sentence stress, inappropriate word stress, for me, there isn't enough in there to award that 8. So I'm going to drop to a 7 with pronunciation, which I'm surprised at because at the time, I think during the test, I gave the candidate 7.5, I think. Because I felt like, I think I gave 7887 or something like this, or 8887. I'm not sure. So my immediate thoughts were that the candidate was, you know, at least at 7.5, maybe at an 8. But having rewatched it, the mark is a little bit lower. So I am sorry about that. I don't like being off by a full band. But for me, I'm going to go with the 7. Now, if this candidate produced this performance in a real test, would I be surprised if the candidate got 7.5? Absolutely not. For me, there is justification possibly to give 7.5. And while I'm making this video, I award 7.0. If I was examining live and I had this performance, I would find a way to give this candidate 7.5 just because, and I know we should always use the rubric, we should always use the criteria and not think, what does the candidate feel like? I would award the candidate 7.5 for this performance. I would maybe I would boost the grammar to an 8 because of that amazing range. So yeah, a difficult one to say. I'm gonna No, I'm going to stick with 7.0. I'm going to stick with 7.0 because that's what the rubric says. But if I was doing this in person, I would probably award 7.5. I see the candidate ceiling actually quite high. I give the candidate a ceiling of 8.5, which might surprise some of you. But I do think the candidate has the potential to get 9 in. The candidate has the potential to get a 9 in vocabulary for sure. I don't think the candidate has a potential to get 9 in pronunciation or a 9 in grammar, but I think the candidate could possibly, if he stopped IELTSing and started speaking a bit more naturally, I think he would also have the potential to get a 9 in fluency and coherence. I think his fluency, natural fluency, is that good. So a ceiling of 8.5, but this performance 7.0. So strange. I will say Aziz is a really nice guy. We had a chat before the test. We had quite a long chat after the test too. He works as an IELTS teacher, and you know, if you're a student of Aziz's and you see the score of 7.0 and you think, oh, my teacher only has 7.0, his English level is higher than that, right? This is just a test. This is just an IELTS test. And, you know, ideally, you'd want to see a candidate taking 10 tests to find the average, because there will always be some variety in there. I do think the candidate's overall English, not speaking, but overall English, is probably at that C2 level, and I fully expect him in the real IELTS to get 8.0, 8.5. But yeah, a few improvements to be made in speaking for sure. Anyway, those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think. Are my marks too harsh? Quite a few people said that the candidate deserves 8. Some people said 7.5. Some people said 7. I'm really happy that my audience, you know, they're very accurate now with their marks that they give. It's really, really pleasant to see. Yeah, I'll leave it there. If you'd like to have your own free practice IELTS speaking test with feedback, or if you'd like me to check your IELTS writing tasks, join one of my groups. I'm on Telegram and Facebook. Candidates are always selected at random. So many people write to me and say, why didn't you choose me? Why didn't you choose me? I've been waiting for a long time. I've been waiting for 2 months. I've been waiting for 6 months. Because these tests are for free, right? They are for free. You can't complain to me, right? If you pay me money and I don't do what I'm supposed to do, you can complain. You can say, hey, dude, I gave you this. What's going on? Because these tests are for free, you can't accuse me of being unfair. Candidates are always selected at random for these tests. If you don't like the random process, if you want to pay for a speaking test or a writing check, then check out my website, expertexaminer.com, link in the description. A full price list is available there. But please don't complain to me that you haven't been selected for the free tests. They're for free. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. Have a wonderful day, everybody. See you all. More videos coming soon, but for now, bye-bye.